Welcome to the Get Together. It's our show about ordinary people building extraordinary communities. I'm your host, Bailey Richardson. I'm a partner at People & Company and a co-author of Get Together, How to Build a Community with Your People.
And I'm Kevin Huynh, Bailey's business partner and friend at People & Company, where we advise organizations on how to cultivate meaningful communities.
Absolutely, you're my friend, Kevin. In each episode, we interview everyday people who have built extraordinary communities about just how they did it. How did they get the first people to show up? How did they grow to hundreds, thousands more members? Today, we're talking to Nichols and Steffi Behringer, two of the founders of the Allyship and Action Summits that took the advertising community by storm these past few months. In the wake of George Floyd's murder, the Allyship and Action Summit emerged as a source of information on allyship, providing tangible next steps on anti-racism in ad land. The summit and supporting Slack groups and workshops connect allies to Black creatives and allies to other allies to learn and continue the conversation. Kev, question for you. You're a big fan of Nate and Steffi's. Why were you so stoked to bring them on the podcast?
Yeah, so I've been friends with Nate for 7 or 8 years now. I feel like our early careers just kind of continued to grow in parallel. And I met Steffi after they first met and are now life and business partners. So baseline excitement, just always a pleasure getting to interview friends. In particular, though, I've just been so impressed and inspired by these two this year. The origin story of Allyship in Action, as well as Freelancer Cyber Summit, which is sort of the event series it falls under, comes from a place of struggle. They run an agency called Pallete Group. They lost business when the pandemic hit. And I witnessed them flip that challenge into an opportunity. If they were thinking, if we have to navigate this tough time for our business, others in the advertising industry probably do too. Let's organize them. Let's organize the freelancers and creatives and have a conversation of how the F are we going to get through this? And then after the murder of George Floyd, they stepped up again, seeing the need for a community within their industry that's promoting, facilitating, and pushing conversation related to anti-racism. They've just met uncertainty with community building multiple times. They've addressed uncertainty with organizing people to provide guidance to each other. And so I just really appreciate them. I love them. And so glad that we were able to talk a bit about their stories today.
I know you, Kevin, well enough to know that you have a crush on action and people who take action. It's like action over talking, so hardcore in your preference list. And I think that's one thing that we both love about them is they just make stuff happen. And you'll hear more about that on the podcast today. Should we jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Nate and Steffi, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here and finally get to talk to you about the Allyship and Action Summit that y'all have been working on hard for the last few months. I want to kick off with the question, Kevin, I love to ask everyone who comes on the podcast. We like to say that you can't fake the funk. When you're organizing a community, when you're getting a group of people together, you personally have to care about that community's purpose and mission yourself. So I'd love for you to just share what drove you both to this point where you were getting together an Allyship and Action Summit. What part of your background, what part of your personal experiences led you to this point?
That's a great question. I think looking back of how 2020 started, we were full of motivation and had our plans down how 2020 should look like for us on a professional level, but also personal level. And in March, COVID swept over to New York. We found ourselves in, the situation like so many others that all of our projects were put on hold, on ice, got canceled or postponed, and we didn't know what to do. And we're super into our strategic phase where I'm like, okay, let's see how we can still be of service. And we started thinking with, why don't we do a virtual event that brings together the freelancer community that we are part of, because we work with a lot of freelancers. I've been freelancing the past 2 years, and we created the Freelancer Cyber Summit, which is basically a continuous series of virtual events to bring the creative people together with the advertising industry and to talk about that situation where we all found ourselves in, of like, what the fuck is going on, and what is this pandemic, and what those opportunities and the challenges look like right now and in a couple months. And so we gathered people from agencies and brands from the advertising industry together and had a conversation, very real and honest. And obviously no one had the answers, but just the exchange of what everyone was feeling and going through just helped a lot to go the next step and feel more confident that you're not the only person in this and it's a shared struggle. That first summit was in March, and we continued the series once a month. In June, everything was different. I remember Nate and we were actually celebrating his birthday on May 25th, which was also when...
Happy birthday, Nate. Happy B-Day.
Yeah, but we decided to, celebrate a day early because it was the holiday, Memorial Day. And that was, kind of crazy because it was also the day when George Floyd died. And it was a very surreal and heavy time. And with the upcoming Freelancer Cyber Summit that we wanted to host in June, we couldn't think about anything else and immediately decided to do something different. It was kind of like the universe calling like-minded people, amazing, allies actually reached out to us a day after and said what we wanted to create an event and talk about this revolution that all of a sudden popped off. So we had a handful of amazing people on the line, and we all decided to, using our platform that we started in March, continuously, grew and scaled to a point where we had around 700 people joining us.
Wow.
To use that platform and transform it into a new platform, which is now Allyship in Action, and to have a conversation about the systemic racism in our industry. And that's when Allyship in Action was born, and we hosted that first event on June 18th. That we had 2,500 registered within a week, and like 2,000 people showed up, which is really awesome.
Yeah, you guys absolutely served a very clear and urgent need. You adjusted to show up for that. I think the name is really powerful. I was curious, what's behind the words Allyship and Action? How did you decide on those two names to describe the summit?
The word allyship is a funny word for a Black person, right? Because basically you're trying to state, if you're like a self-proclaimed anything, you're stating that you're stepping into, identity, a specific identity. And as a Black person, you're walking around with zero allies in the world because your suffering and your pain and sadness is something you walk with every single day, and no one cares. Everyone looks past it. And you're constantly just getting passed up professionally by colleagues who can't see you and are getting promotions while you take a back seat. As an agency owner and operator, it's like, I don't see as much deal flow as other white agency owners and operators. And it's just clear as day. You could see it through the award ceremonies. You could see it through the top list of whatever, the 30 under 30s, whatever those lists are, that the majority of these,
no more 30 under 30.
Right?
Sorry, make it stop.
Right. But, you could just see how, media and how people just prop up and lionize, people that aren't Black or people of color. And they just lionize white people. And so when the word ally specifically, to me, it does not absolve you from being a part of the problem. All you're doing when you state that is you are taking the next word into consideration, which is action. You are claiming that you are being productive with your allyship. You are existing and you are being in a productive space every single day. And what that looks like is sacrificing things, sacrificing your time, sacrificing your emotional space, sacrificing whatever you're reading to read about, colonization of Black spaces in Black culture, in Black land, in Black community, and people of color spaces and places, and etc. Like you're just doing what you need to do to learn and become educated and understand the systems that have been oppressing and suppressing people of color and Black people. And so the idea of allyship in action is really just something that people can feel like they are a part of a community where they don't feel alone in their discomfort of reconditioning themselves, trying to figure out how they're going to support and prop up people who were oppressed and discriminated against for centuries and for years, personally and professionally.
Yeah, and I think if I can add on to this, as a white woman, allyship is really, like Nate just said, it's about that we all need to implicate ourselves as part of the problem, so we can all be implicated as part of the solution. So how can I, as a white woman, be an ally for, Black women, for example? And it's this revolution, we really wanted to go beyond these like Black square posts on Instagram and all the statements. And it has this part of accountability to it where we wanted to, again, bring these people, virtually on stage and really ask them, okay, so you posted, you're supporting Black Lives Matters, but what are the actual steps that you're taking, and what is the type of allyship that you're foreseeing for yourself and your organization? And so we all kind of brainstormed about different names, but what really it came down to what's the role, what's your individual role in this revolution? How can you be an ally and go beyond just words? What are the actionable steps that you can take?
I'm not really one for war and battle analogies, but what you're saying makes me think about how oftentimes when the word ally has been used, it doesn't mean that the ally has always been supportive of your cause. That these sometimes is reaching to people who have been either not so involved in supporting before, or have even been part of the problem or part of the enemy in a way, and that allyship is like an active stance, and it's it often requires sort of shifting one's position or perspective to one that is more so supportive of a certain people and what they care about.
You bring in a battle analogy like that. War is like sacrifice. You're risking your life. There's two options. There's you defeat the enemy in the opposition, or you die. That's a huge sacrifice. It's binary AF, and that's what true allyship should be. It's like you're just committed and that's it. Like, period. Like, what are you going to be sacrificing to be committed, period?
One thing that I've found really compelling about the work that y'all are doing is the focus on the group of people. One thing we talk about with starting up a community is how it's powerful to be very specific about who you want to bring together. It needs to pass this test where someone can raise their hand and be like, oh, yeah, I am that. I am an advertising professional. So much so that sort of like the language speaks to them. And I know that Allyship in Action is centered on bringing together people within and around the advertising industry. Could you, for folks that aren't as familiar with advertising, and Nate, you alluded a bit to this, but can you share more around, what are these challenges facing the industry? Like, why does advertising specifically need an Allyship in Action Summit? What are some of those nuances of what is going on within advertising?
That's a great question. And, we find ourselves in meetings at times with our clients, and to have requests is our job to service the brand, the client, and our specific capacity is like production. So it's either experiences or video, film, photo, design. And when you're sitting at a table talking about like a video treatment or a photo treatment, there are like subtle microaggressions or just blatant racist things being said and done in a way that everyone's sort of passive about. And a very clear example is you're sitting at a table and you're talking about casting, and your client's like, we want to cast white people. Like, we don't want to cast anybody. We want to cast this type of person. It's very clear that they're not open to a diverse set of casting options. Or someone on set has a certain look and they're like, hey, could you put that person in the background? And you're like, what? This is a person. It doesn't matter where they are. This is a wedding scene. Like, all people are at weddings. Like, it shouldn't matter what they look like and where they're placed on set, if they're extra or not, and so there are just these blatant disregards of humanity in advertising that happen a lot. And there's appropriation. So you have people writing copy and telling stories in advertising that have no idea about, an experience, a life experience. For example, you'll have a man writing a copy for, some drink that is made for pregnant women. It's like, why is a man writing copy for women at all, period, let alone a pregnant woman? And that happens all the time, where someone who has no idea about a life experience is creating and contextualizing a message and crafting a message and positioning creative for a community that have zero context of, that have no experience existing in that life experience. And so that's just wrong, right? Just wrong. And so in our industry, it just happens every day. And on top of that, there's just a lack of Black people and people of color in the executive levels, not just in our industry, but in every industry. And, a lot of the time in specific industries and in categories for on the brand side, you have like brands like footwear, like Nike, or Foot Locker, where Foot Locker is actually very, very, very rich and diverse. There's a lot of Black people and people of color that work for Foot Locker. And the main consumer for a footwear brand is mostly Black people, people of color. They make footwear a $1 billion industry. And so you have these big businesses being operated and built and propped up by white people who don't have any idea how the life experience and the culture exists around footwear. And so that's the challenge that we're dealing with. And that's why Allyship in Action exists for the time being in advertising.
I've never worked as much in production or creative as you guys have. Done a lot of like pixel pushing kind of work. And it sounds like really like the advertising and entertainment industries are the tip of the spear for the stories we tell about who our heroes are or who gets to play what role in this society. So it's a very like sharp point for a lot of these tensions and a lot of the systemic racism that shows up. I want to ask you a question about, Steffi, you mentioned this. You had so many people register and tune in, like over 2,000 people. Mm-hmm. And one thing that struck me is that a lot of these folks might have been lone wolves in their agencies, at their companies. What was your thinking about how you might be able to get a signal out to those folks about the summit?
How did you howl at the wolves? Is that
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We're super blessed and grateful that we have such awesome partners working alongside of us, organizations like the One Club or Working Not Working or Picture, like those organizations, and they have platforms, with a huge reach internationally to all the creative people around the world. And they've been with us from the early start, from the very first virtual summit that we hosted. And so with that kind of support, we were able to build a solid foundation to make room and space for these types of conversations and reach so many people. And what it really struck us too, like we had no expectations. After the first Allyship in Action, we were flooded with such amazing, powerful, meaningful feedback, comments, tweets of people that are looking for this this type of support. And it was, obvious that this was much needed and that we need more of this in the future. And so what we did was, in the beginning, we founded groups on Facebook and LinkedIn to stay in touch and stay connected. Even, after a virtual summit, we also founded a Slack channel. That's when the true magic really happened, because these people joined the Slack channel and it grew every day. Now we have like around 300 people in the Slack channel. And like you said, they all are sort of like lone wolves in their own organizations and agencies and brands, and trying to bring the conversation inside, like have the leadership team, their own team, come to the table and discuss kind of, this conversation, the challenges about diversity and equity in our system, and drive that forward. And with the Slack channel, it was so humbling to see how these people founded their own groups and founded initiatives and, programs that they individually wanted to work on. That was really something that we've never really saw coming, and but are super grateful, and we are definitely looking forward to continue grow with everyone.
I want to talk about the Slack group and the community element. I also want to maybe ask a little bit more about how you've communicated about the summit. I think one thing that struck me is the graphics and the imagery are so unique and so striking. And also, Nate, in particular, you've been so personal and so honest in your communication throughout this time. And I think it's really made me think about how maybe a big agency or a big organization or a big brand, they kind of polish and review and water down a lot of things that they do in this space. There's so many people sort of reviewing and editing and changing that they don't end up saying very much in the end. And I think I've been really struck by how personal and like honest all the conversations are, and also how you guys have presented what the summit is, both visually and in language. How have you felt becoming such a public, like sort of leader in this space and being so communicative with the general world?
When Steffi and I originally thought of the Freelancer Cyber Summit, and I was bopping around art direction ideas in my head, the whole corona and pandemic and quarantine experience just felt very surreal. And honestly, surrealism is like one of my favorite art forms. And I have a designer friend, Dewey Saunders, out in LA, originally from Philly. We're homies. We've worked together in the past on small projects that were fun and again, surreal. And he's one of my favorite artists, right? He has these collages that he does. And then in the moment of being in the pandemic, I'm like, you know what? All of this feels A, surreal, but then B, the advertising industry is just one big hodgepodge of just like layers of just shit. Like, it's just a bunch of different people's life experiences just kind of slapped onto each other in a way that no one has been able to sort of depict or talk about. And that's sort of at the core of the creative, is that the industry is just a collage of just life experiences that have just been slapped together in a way that creates an environment and an ecosystem that we've all just agreed that makes sense. And in reality, it just doesn't. You have white people, at the helm of these advertising agencies and these brands making decisions on how consumers and people who don't have the same life experience should consume their messaging and buy a thing. It's all surreal. It all just doesn't make sense. And so the art direction is really a reflection of that. And, that's sort of our brand ethos from a Pallete Group perspective, is we're raw, we're unfiltered, we're honest. And go back a bit further, it's sort of like how I exist personally, you know, walking through the world is I like to be just this unfiltered and raw and honest person. And I sort of just am that. And when I get into a space with other humans, I'm going to be myself. And the expectation for me is you're not going to alienate me in what I share and how I exist, because that's just wrong. Like, no one should ever alienate and make anyone feel bad about themselves and how they are self-expressed. And my goal in showing up as my whole self and being self-expressed is that hopefully this person or persons in the same room get to be themselves as well. They get to be fully self-expressed and not feel alienated either. And we can just meet each other where we are. And so when you see me being honest and raw on social media, it's really just to, again, push up against the system and be like, yo, y'all don't have to, confide to every TikTok challenge. And you know what? Like, not for nothing, like, it's the level of their self-expression. And I get why Instagram has done that. I just want people to realize that, you could just be your whole self on these platforms, and there are people that will accept you for who you are and, reflect that back onto social media, because quite frankly, I think we need more of that on social media. We need more of the honesty and truth. And, for this moment that we're in the revolution that we're in, it's just, we need more Black people to speak up and share their stories, because it's just fucked up what we've gone through. And for the first time, we're actually being seen and heard and felt, and if we don't tell our story wholly and honestly, we'll never be heard and we'll never be seen. And you just need to see and feel the sadness and frustration and just be with it, because your shame and your guilt weighs ounces. The weight of our generational trauma weighs tons. And we need to heal, whether you like it or not. And true allyship is knowing that whether I like it or not, they need to heal. And we need to confront that sadness and that shame and that guilt and do something about it. And so that is where I'm coming from when I speak the way I do. And when I share what I share is because, I'm just tired. My family's been tired for generations, and the people have been tired for generations, and we just ain't got time for it anymore. We just got to be. I just want to be.
As we've researched communities, one of the things we have come to believe is that believe is in the power of role models, and how by role modeling and spotlighting role models, you can encourage other community members to participate and contribute in ways they may not have been ready to or did not think to. And I think what's humbling at the moment is that what we need in the revolution is more people who are further away from the trauma to act and contribute and to participate. And for you especially to step up, if you continually stepping up, but especially stepping up with Steffi and bringing your team along and bringing others along in this moment, I think shines as a role model of like, this is how I am contributing, as you said, as someone who, feels the weight of tons. And if you feel the weight of ounces, like now is your time to step up too. And I think that's magnetic and something that, I really respect you for as a leader and a friend.
Yeah, I gotta say too, this is, what I love so much about Nate and admire. And it's just like a constant daily reminder of there's no room and space for shame. Like, it's so important that we all, lift various different stories and voices, and that we are not afraid to tell our stories. I think if we learn to be publicly imperfect and to be okay with that in front of each other, I think that's really the baseline of, creating more rawness and equality amongst each other. And that's really through storytelling, right? Like, Nate has been an open book about his life and, career and all the steps. And that's also a way to build empathy, really. And that's what we all need more than ever.
You guys have touched a little bit on how personal and honest the communication has been, the storytelling has been, the freshness of the graphics. You know, both of you are professional creatives, and Steffi, producer. I want to ask, is there anything else that you're really proud of about how you designed this summit? What's something that you would call out that you think has been a really valuable design decision?
I think what we've really learned doing well is two things. One is the programming, putting together an agenda, kind of looking for the people that come that we can bring together and really establish resourceful and meaningful conversation is one part, and the other part is the creative that we've put together from the start of the collage, like Nate just described, to now what's like Allyship in action. We have amazing creatives and designers helping us with building and designing these loud, colorful assets that really speak to the brand ethos of Allyship in action. And I think that's really what puts us apart of other, virtual summits. I think those two parts, the programming and the creative, has been kind of our secret sauce, if you want to take it that way.
I'll add that, the virtual conference experience since pandemic and quarantine has popped off has been quite stale and not innovative. They've just been sort of like, come to this virtual conference and come to this virtual thing, and you like pop open your laptop and you show your face or you don't show your face, and you see talking heads. And so it's very like a flat, very linear experience. It's not very engaging and interactive in any way. And so what we did very intentionally, me having a director like background and creative prowess around like editing and my design background, one of the key decisions we made was to develop these holding room experiences, these like long 10-minute holding periods where you're just with your screen being entertained by the screen. And the screen is setting the tone. Like this 10-minute video is setting the tone for what you're about to jump into at our event. And I'm very intentionally doing sound design. I'm using copy, and I'm writing very intentionally things that are playful or very serious. I'm using colors very intentionally. And it's a very like fun, creative way to make the square that we all stare at all day during quarantine more fun and interactive, and less of like something you've done before. It's not like watching Netflix. It's not like watching a TV show. It's somewhere in the middle of, this is a whole new experience because it's not pre-recorded, it's live, and I'm watching the screen, but I'm entertained by it in a way that it's telling me to do things like send a tweet. So I'm going to send this tweet, right? And I'm going to like use the hashtag, and I'm going to go follow you, and I'm going to think about things. And wow, there's this amazing guy, James Baldwin. I never heard of him before, and I'm going to learn. And so it's like a multitude of these different experiences, because we understand that the computer can be dull and flat during quarantine. So it's how can you innovate on the experience of a human being staring at their computer in a way that's dynamic and fun.
Yeah, adding to that too is really the emotional message that Nate puts into these videos are, like you said, it's setting the tone. It's really something that we created in a way that we can speak right through this camera and this screen in front of you, but we really wanted to speak right through, like to you. There's still this virtual, obviously, aspect to it. We can't be together, social distancing, but we really wanted to create this virtual experience as close as we would be all together in the same room. So my background in production, I've produced huge conferences and summits for Google, YouTube, like a bunch of different companies and organizations. And you go through each touch point that you have with the consumer, right? With the client, is from the way they get the invitation via email or mail to when they come on site and register, and then dive into the immersive experience. And we took that same approach and designed the virtual experience based on these touch points, and thought about, okay, how can we be as close as possible to our audience, even though we're all in our own homes on our own couch. And with these videos and breaks in between, we found a way to do that. And also, it very strategically how we design the different sessions. So you will never find a longer session than 30 minutes in our summits, just because the attention bandwidth is just short, and we want to keep it short and crisp and tangible in everything that we create. And so the feedback that we received are all, these videos, the creative, the music, everything is just very engaging and fun, and the people just want to stay with us.
Yeah. I love that you described it as a show, because I felt the weight of it like that. Mm-hmm. You guys, with your backgrounds, you just put words to the feeling I had, which was like an emotional show. This was thoughtfully made, and it was an experience. And I think for anyone who hasn't been yet, please sign up and go if you want to see what a virtual experience done with energy and thoughtfulness looks like, because it was so striking to me that I hadn't been on any virtual shared live experience that felt anywhere near what the Allyship and Action Summit felt like to me.
It also speaks to the group of people that you're bringing together. When we talk about advertising, creative freelancers, not only is the sort of the content and the substance of what you're discussing so relevant, but you're also, speaking to them in a language, in a creative language that they want to converse in. I feel like it honors the group of people you're trying to bring together.
Yeah, I think that language is definitely key part in this too. Like we just always kept it super real and just honest, and we drop F-bombs. We just say it as it is. There's no hiding. There's no pandering. It's just say it as it is.
I want to get into the community side of the summit. What are some of the elements that you added into the summit? We talked about the Slack group. But did you think about connecting attendees with one another from the outset, or was that something that you designed in later? And if so, how?
I think it just sort of happened based on demand, There was just a request. And I think there's this really good book called People and Company.
Go on.
In the book, they always say that you should listen to your community and serve them in the way they want to be served. If they have a request, meet it where it is, and if it's at a level that is sustainable, and they're committed to sustaining and attributing value and energy into it, build it. So yeah, very quickly, I think the first summit, everyone was like, how do we keep the conversation going? And they were like, a Slack, let's do a Slack. And some dude was like, I'm going to start a Slack. And I'm just like, cool. And now we're we're still trying to design it in a way that's sort of self-sustainable, and the energy is consistent and scaling up. We wanted to bring community together to redefine the systems we have. And that takes new policies, it takes new structures, new systems, and just education. And so this is a part of allyship. And so, we're just continuing to do that and, meet them where they are and figure out what they want next. And you just be there to support them, because the community is theirs. We're just there to help facilitate.
I want to ask you also about the certification, which I think is a really innovative idea. What is the certification, and why did you bring it into the summit? Why did you guys introduce that to attendees?
So at the end of the day, talk is still pretty cheap, right? The format that we've developed is about talking heads. Fundamentally, it's about bringing people in and sort of like and like, it's still very performative in nature, and we know that, and I'm not going to sit here and just let that just be the end of it. If there are systems that we can develop to reset corporate America, let's do it. Let's figure out how to create unique systems. And so the idea of the certification platform was simple. Like, agencies just out of nowhere just got really defensive and were like, oh my God, we don't want to be racist, and started just like dumping their workforce diversity numbers into the internet ether. And while that's great, it still doesn't showcase a clear plan. It doesn't showcase clear reality on retention. And it's not really a high level overview of how corporate America looks in where safe space is for various communities. These reports were like EEOC data, which is like Black people, white people, Asian people. It doesn't say anything about LGBTQ plus communities. It doesn't say anything about chronically ill or disabled communities. It doesn't say anything about sexuality or gender or non-binary communities. Like, it's just very surface level data, and that's just the government being the government. We can't trust them. So it's like, why not build something that's very clear and unbiased on getting the details and withholding privacy of the humans that work at brands, at agencies, at law firms, just in corporate America in general, and serve it up to the world that's transparent and public. And so the long-term vision is to build a tool where organizations, big and small, can sort of be certified by being transparent with their data and having a certain number of projects to have to staff diversely every year. Staffing diversely is broad because, again, there's all these different types of communities that are being discriminated against and need opportunities. And that's our goal, is to make sure these communities have opportunities, and these communities can see what industries and what verticals there are opportunities in. If you're chronically ill or disabled and that's your life, you need to, if you don't have any context of how you can work professionally with the level of ability you have, it's going to be challenging. And so imagine if there was a state of equity report annually that's a beautifully designed visual report or dashboard that can showcase, the communities that you feel like you identify in. You can see where there's the most retention, so that this culture is safe in the film industry, or this culture is safe in the consulting industry on the business side, and that your community is also being promoted. Right? You can see how many people of color or Black people are being promoted year over year in certain verticals of industries or certain sectors. So the vision is to be able to have data that can create transparency and accountability, but also serve the communities that were discriminated against in a way that they can make strategic and intentional decisions with their lives and their professional careers. Whether it's, I want to put a dent in this sector, in the banking sector, because I don't see enough of us here, or I want to go work in advertising because I can see opportunity here and there's safe space for me there.
It really pretty much comes down to really hold the advertising industry accountable to, really commit to being more transparent and give them another opportunity to actually take action. We want the agencies and brands and tech startups, everyone to, be proud of hiring diversely, of giving multiple perspectives and experience a platform and a voice, and come together. And just hopefully, if you are ANA certified, we want you to also demand of all your partners and clients and vendors to also be ANA certified. This should become the norm and a standard in our industry, that we don't have to hide it anymore and or not be open about this. You should be proud of it. So we're hoping with this certification platform, it will be some sort of like domino effect in the industry. And long-term vision is that it will also go beyond the advertising industry and really, trickle down in across other industries as well. So it's really about the accountability part and transparency. And like Nate was saying, we're working with an amazing tech team already to also, make it fun and make it more creative and innovative to actually see this diversity data on like publicly on this website later on. We can't wait to, kind of design it in a way that fits to all sizes and all types of organizations, from a small boutique agency to the largest corporate company. It should be for everyone. It will be for everyone.
So you have an amazing show, the actual summit. The experience of it is remarkable. You have a community now of attendees who want to, on an individual level, keep taking action, share resources, share accountability with each other. And now you have a certification program for also corporations and businesses to be accountable, to keep acting, to keep being allies through action. What's next on your guys' mind? What are you focusing on? And is there anything that you want to put out to our listeners, put out to the universe that they can help you with?
A message is something I would like to send out to your listeners, is that this work is thankless and there's no overnight fix. There's no switch you can just flip. And it's hard, but you still have power. You have so much power in your everyday life to read more and educate yourself, to share your reading and your learnings with your friends, with your peers, to make friends that don't come from the community you come from or the culture you come from. And imagine what the world would be like if you just set that intention. We just made new friends. Imagine if every CEO just made a bunch of new friends and just made their way out of the same old circle jerk. This is what we need, is we need just people to see the power that they have in themselves to make a very small change that can compound over time. And yeah, just be with us on the journey, and we'll keep you posted on different actions that you can take that are more, I guess, tangible, so to speak, to get the certification out there and prep for the next summit. But for the most part, it's really just a message, and see yourself as powerful and having power in your journey as an ally.
Yeah, I think my hope is really that we are all together, are only responding to this, very moment of crisis, that, we really allow this moment of like catalyze ourselves in a new way of being, a new way of thinking, and like learning and coming together and listen to each other, and also building community, right? Like we love to brainstorm, we love bringing people together, and we want to continue these summits to providing this platform and a forum where we can all learn from each other.
The final question I want to ask you is a personal one. You guys are partners in the summit, partners in work, but also life partners. And I'm curious if you're open to sharing, what has hosting this event meant to you two personally, or to your relationship? How has it been for you to share something like this?
Wow, yeah, that's such a good question. I'm so proud and grateful for our relationship, and especially the way that we work and live together. Like we're literally 24/7 together. And these virtual summits, from the Freelancer Cyber Summit to Allyship and Action, is actually the first project, I would say, where we both really full time on work together. the previous projects were jumping in if there was support needed, or, I was doing my freelance gigs and helping out, and or vice versa. Nate was helping me out. But the past 6 months, that has really been such an amazing journey, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished together. And I'm just super grateful to be Nate's partner that can be part of his journey and just like learn together, grow together. And I would have never thought that this is going to be part of our lives. Like, looking back, it feels like this has always meant to be, though. The work that we've put in, all the energy and everything, was the reason for where we are today. And I truly believe that, everything is meant for a reason. And I feel super humble to be part and to build something so profound and relevant and resourceful for hopefully a wider reach, and can contribute to this conversation and revolution. So this has been a really fun ride, and I look forward to much more, and take every day as a new surprise and a new blessing, and continue doing this together.
I was hoping you would go first.
I know.
No, for me, it's really just humbling, honestly. This whole life is just a dream. I'm on Steffi's house she grew up on, her balcony right now, recording this podcast, and I'm looking at the Swiss Alps, and this is my life partner. This is her family's home. This is where she grew up. This is where she lives, and so much history and life experience exists for her. And now we have a whole future life experience to sort of design and build here. And I'm just humbled by it, because I don't know, I just didn't see any of this coming my entire life. I didn't have access to things. And so, I barely had, growing up, I didn't know what love from, a woman truly was, and how that could exist until I was in my 20s. And so to be fortunate enough to stumble into a woman like Steffi, who's been so loving and caring and graceful, and just like a hustler, like, what the fuck? Like, she is just, like, I haven't had a business partner like her before who has stepped toe to toe where, can put in the same amount of hours I put in, just having fun and being like, nah, we need to push a bit further and then even further, and have that tenacity. I've never had a business partner like that, ever, let alone a life partner, let alone a woman that I can admire and enjoy just because she's just so sincere and nice and kind to everyone she's with. And so for me, it's just like, whoa, how did I end up here? On the other side of that is, we've both individually worked so hard to be the people we are and worked on ourselves that, to Steffi's point, like, there's no doubt that we should have stumbled into each other and should have been working together and should have now be designing our lives together in a way that we've always wanted to have a life as individuals, but we're doing it together. Call it faith, call it luck, call it fate, whatever you want to call it. It just is what it is. And,
Destiny.
Word, yeah, I just feel very fortunate, and I'm happy, I'm just happy and proud of her and proud of us, and that we get to figure this out together.
Same.
I'm excited to see what's ahead. You guys have a lot of power in your relationship and in this focus. So I'm happy to be near what you all are doing. All right. Well, thank you both for your time. We're excited to see the next summit, see what you guys are cranking on.
Thank you so much, Billy. Thank you, Kevin.
Woo!
Appreciate y'all.
If you want to connect with the Allyship and Action Summit, you can learn more at allyshipinaction.com. That's a pledge they've started for the advertising industry. You can see their events at freelancercybersummit.com. And if you want to work with Nate and Steffi, they're producing rad campaigns as well as summits as part of their agency now. So check out Pallete Group, PALETTEGRP.com. It's like Pallete Group. Pallete Group. Pallete Group. Thank you to our team. Thank you to Rosanna Caban for sound engineering and editing this episode, Katie O'Connell for marketing it, and Greg David for his design work.
Rad! You can find out more about the work we do as People and Company, helping organizations get clearer on who their most important communities are and how to build with those people by heading to our website, peopleand.company. It's a .company, not a .com. Also, if you want to start your own community or be a super member, a supercharged member of one you're already a part of, our handbook is here for you. Visit gettogetherbook.com to grab your copy. It's full of stories and learnings from conversations with community leaders, like this one with Nate and Steffi. And last thing, if you have the time, if your fingers are nimble, please review this podcast or click subscribe or do both. They really help the podcast get out to more people and stories like Nate and Steffi's be heard by more ears. So we appreciate it. See y'all next time.
Thanks, y'all.